Well, hello and welcome back to Hey, it's the Luskos. This is Levi, and I am flying solo today here on the podcast. The lovely, the effervescent, the ever so beautiful Jennifer Lusko is unable to join me because of a medical issue. And I promise you this, you stay tuned in the episode to the 3/4 mark. I do explain Jenny's absence. It does involve dentistry or malpractice by the dentist. So if you listen into the episode, I do give the context on Jenny being not with us today, but she sends her love, and she will be back with us next week, back in the saddle. Everything's fine, I should say. It's not as dramatic as I'm making it sound, but she is not able to talk because of something that happened at the dentist, and I will give that. So you have to, I'm coaxing you, teasing you out. We have today on the podcast the fifth in a series of our 7 episodes as we're still celebrating coming around the release of The Last Supper on the Moon. We picked out 7 different guests that all speak to something that kind of touches on this theme of inner space, outer space. So yes, we've had a few astronauts on. But we also have been bringing in people either in some way who write or speak about dealing with inner space and these issues of leading ourselves and dealing with hard things and just are just bright lights in that way. So we have still to come 2 more episodes. It's been fabulous, and this season 3 of the podcast continues, which Jenny and I absolutely love and are grateful for those of you who are sharing about these episodes, letting us know how they've meant something to you along the way, and or are leaving a rating or a review on iTunes or subscribing to the Levi and Jenny Lusko YouTube page. It's awesome. So today on the podcast, my good friend Shawn Johnson, who leads Red Rocks Church in Denver, Colorado, in Austin, Texas, as well as Brussels, Belgium. I don't know why Brussels, Belgium. Maybe it's because it's the BR then BE. So it's like the vowel sound is in the second word. Brussels, Belgium. It's kind of a tongue twister. Can you say that? Brussels, Belgium. It just doesn't roll off the tongue. Denver, Colorado. Helena, Montana. Brussels, Belgium. Also, it sounds like a vegetable. And then the second one's a beer. It's like vegetable beer. Brussels, sprout, Belgium. Anyhow, the church is amazing. Been there a number of times. Love his preaching, love his friendship, love his leading. And he has a new book out, which we talk about in the episode, Attacking Anxiety, which is amazing. So really excited that Shawn would come and spend some time on the podcast. All the love and gratitude for you listening and spending this time with us. Enjoy this conversation with Shawn Johnson. Shawn Johnson, welcome to Hey, it's the Luskos.
What's happening, bro? Thank you for having me.
Dude, look at you. And you have so many things behind you I want to ask questions about. You have
What do you want to see back there?
Okay, so I see a basketball in a glass case.
Yep.
What's going on with
that is signed by Kobe Bryant. Get this. Our church we had our 15-year anniversary for the church, and they brought me up on stage. I didn't know they were doing this. A bunch of you guys actually filmed videos saying happy birthday and all this stuff. And then they gave me this Kobe Bryant signed basketball.
Wow. When was that?
Well, here's what's crazy. So they know I've been a Lakers fan forever, for better or for worse. Am now currently a Nuggets fan, for the record.
Yeah.
But
state pride.
Yeah. Well, so before I was ever a Christian and part of church world, I lived in LA and was trying to work in the film business. And I got hired on a crew that did Laker commercials. And so we went to the University of Honolulu, because that's where they used to do their preseason, for like 2 weeks and did Lakers commercials. And I was just like peon on the set. And so in this commercial, they were like throwing a basketball to the player, and then he would talk a little trash and throw it. Well, I was the guy throwing the ball with the players. And there was this rookie who nobody knew of out of high school named Kobe Bryant. And so I'm sitting there throwing basketball with him, talking in between sets. I don't know who he is, obviously. And so anyways, I've been a fan his whole career.
Wow.
They give me this basketball for our 15-year anniversary as a church. And I thought, well, that's thoughtful. Weird gift, for like 15 years as the church. Here's a basketball. It was weird, but I was like, that's really cool. 3 weeks later, he passes
Oh
away.
my gosh. So
Isn't that
2020,
crazy?
so that would have been like what? Wasn't that January 2020?
January of 2020. Yep.
Yeah, that was the start to, that was the beginning of the end in 2020. That was the beginning of troubles, as the Bible would say.
Oh, bro. What's so funny is, so that's when, I know we're going to talk about my journey with anxiety, but that's when I went back to work after having a pretty long time off work, trying to figure out some stuff. And all my counselor said was, when you go back to work, no big changes.
Oh my gosh.
No, don't put yourself under a lot of stress. Just take it easy. And then COVID.
Yeah,
I
that was
like, yeah,
2020
right.
was not in on the planning meeting for that one.
No, they
We
didn't.
want
They
to
didn't
give
show up.
Shawn a nice, gentle year with nothing violent. Okay, so
Yeah.
you got a basketball signed by the Mamba himself, and then
By the Mamba.
what's the other ball I see over there?
Oh, so that one right there is signed by Steph Curry. No real cool story other than my boys and I love Steph Curry, and
As one does when one loves awesome
as
things.
one does.
Yeah.
In fact, me and Ethan were at the game when they broke the Bulls single season win record. What was it, like 73 games, I think?
You're asking the wrong
72 or
guy
70,
about that. I don't
72 or
know.
73
I know the
games.
Bulls. I've heard of the
We were
Bulls.
at that game, and Steph Curry set a 3-point record that game, so it was a
Wow.
big deal. So, anyways, my son just loves him, and a friend knew him and got us that. So
Now, are the
I've
Nuggets
never.
any good?
The Nuggets have potential, Levi.
Ooh, I like it.
They have potential. Two of their, what they would probably today call their big three, which is the Joker, Jamal Murray, and MPJ. Jamal and MPJ are out on injury leave right now, so they're struggling.
Gotcha.
They've
Now,
got
I
potential.
do like that their name is like a nod to the gold rush, and as is the 49ers. That's kind of a fun thing. I did grow up in Colorado, so I knew of the Nuggets. Never been to a game. Is it a fun thing to go to a game there? Do you guys go to the Nuggets games?
We do occasionally. It's really fun. Funny story, when we started the church, which is now 17 years ago, which is crazy to me.
Wow.
We moved here with some friends to Denver, knew nobody, had no family. So there's just a small group of us that came. And when we started the church, there was like 40 people who came to the church. Well, one of my friends from Illinois had met a girl on an airplane flying to Denver and invited her to the church. And she just happened to be a Nuggets cheerleader and like the CU dance coach or something. So our first service, half the people there were professional or college cheerleaders. And so every guy in the place is like, bro, I like this place.
This is the
place
church for
got
me. They were happy about that.
So we had literally nothing. We're living in someone else's house, but we would go watch the Nuggets and sit front row because the cheerleaders would give us tickets because they were going to the church.
Gotcha.
So I've been going to Nuggets games ever since I've lived here, and I'm a huge fan.
Okay, so that's great. Let's back this up. 17 years. You mentioned you've been in the pastor of the church, which is the Red Rocks Church, not the Red Rocks Church. That's like the Facebook. Red Rocks Church based out of Denver. Of course, you guys have campuses far flung. You guys have, of course, your Austin, Texas location. You've got one in Belgium, right?
Yep, in Brussels.
As one does. That's generally how it works. You go Denver.
Why would trust me? I can't tell you how many times we go. What were we thinking? We love it, but it's a distance.
Yep. Okay, but let's start with the beginning. Where are you from originally? Let's talk about your upbringing, your life, the story of Shawn Johnson.
All right. I'm from Wichita, Kansas. Metroplex. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Interesting. Crazy beginning to life. So my mom got pregnant with me when she was in high school. And when the biological father found out, he freaked and just left town and never to be seen again. So I've never met my father.
Has there been an attempt? Has he ever tried, or have you ever tried?
Not that I know of on his end, and I just haven't.
Yeah.
And I've often thought about it, and then every time I kind of get serious about it, I go, nah.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I think maybe I'm afraid of what might happen. Sometimes I'm just like, I just don't have the energy. But no, I haven't. So
My
my
dad,
mom,
my dad has the same story. Like his biological father, he doesn't have any relationship with, but the guy actually tried later on, and my dad wasn't interested. He just like,
oh, really?
I just, I don't see you. I
Right,
don't relate to you as a dad. You gave me life through technically a donation of a sperm, but that's really
right,
all there is. So
right.
it's interesting.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that to me, definitely growing up as a kid, many times was like, man, I wish I knew him.
Yeah.
But anyways, so my mom is this teenage girl with a baby, scared, doesn't know what to do in life, gets in with the wrong crowd, becomes a heroin addict. At one point, took me as an infant and put me in a car seat. I heard this in her testimony to her church when she got saved later in life. She put me in a car seat, put me on a stranger's porch with a little note saying, "Please take care of him," and went and jumped off of a bridge into oncoming traffic to try to kill herself. And miraculously, she didn't die. She crushed like every bone from her waist down. Didn't die. And then when I was somewhere around 2 years old, she married her drug dealer and continued to be a heroin addict for some time. And so it was a super just
I mean, that is
crazy
Sean.
beginning.
That is wild. I mean, that is and I know you say that every time I've heard you tell that story, which of course I have both around campfires and in preaching settings. I have to just like emotionally recover from the whiplash of that's your first 2 years of life. Of course, you don't
Bro.
remember any of that, right? I
Right,
mean, it's been
right.
told to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard one of the first times I ever really heard about it, my mom got saved later in life. She was giving her testimony at a church and she was talking about that. And I was like, whoa. And, obviously I knew my house was dysfunctional, but I didn't know to what degree.
Yeah.
And she said she would tell stories about how like my baby would be in a corner by himself for most of a day, no food, no diapers. I'm passed out on heroin, like
Bro.
crazy stuff. And when I do, I have told that story several times just because it's my life. I'm just constantly reminded of like the unbelievable father that God is. And the way he takes a life that in all practicality shouldn't have much future and says, no, I got something for you.
Bro.
And
Well, it
so,
puts it into
yeah,
perspective too. For not that of course it's a comparison of hurts or a comparison of how bad is your hurt? My hurt's not that bad. Like, but it does I think what's so powerful about your willingness to share that story and your stories, and the life you're still living is, it makes you go like, okay, if he's gone through all that, and here he is still loving God, serving God, God can work in my situation, and
yeah,
I would just encourage everyone listening. You shared that story among other things in a message you gave called "When Past Hurts Still Hurt." You preached it at Fresh Life. It's the most viewed teaching in the history of Fresh Life Church, which is
it's so good.
amazing. And we, to this day, are seeing thousands upon thousands of people still get blessed by that message. And I'm so grateful that you have been so generous with that and with your journey to finding, not just closure and clarity, but healing and then even weaponizing of that, So thank you for your generosity in opening up, going there, and allowing us to say, hey, like if God could bring Shawn through that, and here he is,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm in awe.
Man, thank you. Thank you. I've always seen all of our testimonies as like, kind of like, when David fought Goliath. I only went to church a handful of times as a kid for random reasons, but I had even heard the story of David and Goliath. And me in my mind, it always stopped at, kills him with the slingshot, story's over. But he actually goes over, takes the very sword that this guy was going to try to kill him with and cuts his head off with it. And I feel like that's all of our testimony. We get to take what the enemy thought he'd take us out with, and we turn around and cut his head off with it.
There you go.
And I love that.
That'll preach.
Yeah.
That's punk rock, bro. Okay,
Come on.
so you're two. Your mom's now marrying her drug dealer.
Hmm. So growing up was tough.
Did
A
you
lot
call
of
him dad?
I did. I did, and took his last name, and a lot of crazy things happened. And by the time I was in college, I was sort of like, man, I don't have to subject myself to hurt anymore, and so I just separated myself. But after college, I moved to LA
To
because I
to hang out with Kobe, as one does.
hang out with Kobe. Truthfully, I didn't want to get a job. I had no real direction in life. And I took an acting class my last semester of school because a friend said it's an easy A and you get to make out with pretty girls. And I'm like, sign me up. And I actually kind of enjoyed it. And so I was like, well, I got an idea. I'll just drive to Hollywood and go be a movie star. And then I don't have to actually go to an office. That was my plan. So I had a Chevy Suburban that barely ran. I packed it up with whatever fit in there and I drove to LA.
From
And
Kansas.
from Kansas. Yeah, I graduated from Kansas University, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, and literally went there with no plan. And I had like $2,000 saved up. And I kind of thought that somebody would meet me out by the Hollywood sign and be like, "Oh, thank God you're here.
Shawn's here.
He's here, guys." And so
You do have really
I
nice
ended up.
dimples. You're a good-looking man. I will say that.
Oh,
No,
stop, stop.
that wouldn't have been in my plan. There were no headshots, so you know.
So I got a few little minor things, but nothing ever took off, and I ended up doing a lot of work behind the cameras, working on a lot of sets, which is how I was on that crew when I got the chance to meet Kobe. But one thing I did do is sort of repeat the pattern of my mom, which was get into the drug culture.
So up until
And
this point, had you avoided it? Because I know there can
no,
sometimes be like, I saw my mom, I didn't want to go that route, you know?
she got saved about the time I was maybe around junior high-ish. And so I don't have any memories of growing up watching her do drugs.
Okay.
I just have heard the stories.
So
Uh,
okay, and she's at that point still married to your stepfather?
yes, yes.
And
And that was a
did
very
he get
difficult
straight too? Did he
situation.
come to know Jesus and get off drugs and stop dealing drugs, or is he still like,
Well, I never saw him do drugs other than maybe smoke marijuana. That was, I saw that with some of his friends and stuff. But his he had a very tough upbringing himself and had a lot of anger and a lot of aggression. And in fact, growing up my whole life, he was by far the scariest person I'd ever met in my whole
was
life.
there abuse in the home?
There was all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, getting off heroin, that's not an easy drug to kick for your mom.
No, so well for me when I was in LA, I only dabbled with heroin. My thing was cocaine, crystal meth. I did everything, and it wasn't like, oh, I accidentally fell into it. I sort of was looking for it. I was like, man, I've grown up in Kansas my whole life. Like, I'm going out to LA. I want to be in the party scene, and it was interesting. I got an agent, and he actually gave me this advice at one point. He was like, you need to be out as much as possible in and around Hollywood at all the clubs because you never know who you're going to meet, and network and who you know means everything in this town. And so me and my roommates, I ended up getting a couple roommates, one of which wanted to do the same thing I did. We considered it like honorable, admirable. Like we're going to work every night. We go out and party and go to the clubs and the bars and the whatever because you never know who you're going to meet.
Gotcha. So your mom's, meanwhile, on this faith journey, complete opposite trajectory. And what was your opinion of her getting religious?
Honestly, as a kid, I remember many times watching things happen in the house or experiencing things that would happen in the house. And I'd go to her privately and go, Mom, please call the cops. Please call the cops. And she would always tell me that she was afraid of what might happen if she did. And so when she got saved, she went like all in. Like every day I saw her reading the Bible. Every night when I went to bed, she was, reading the Bible. She was at church. She started working full time at the church as a volunteer. I mean, she was all in, and it just wasn't my dad's thing. And so that was a super weird dynamic. Maybe backtracking a little bit, by the time I was about a sophomore in high school, I basically stayed with friends through the rest of high school. I wasn't home a lot. I was always trying to get out of that
It was
environment.
a chaotic environment. You're just like, walls up. I'm going to
Yeah.
do my own thing.
Yeah,
You probably had to kind of raise yourself too, I would imagine.
yeah. It's interesting because I I sound like the old guy now with my kids. I'm like, boys, back in the day. But yeah, like I had a full-time job by the time I was 14. And in Kansas at the time, I don't know the laws now, at 14, you could get a learner's permit and you were actually allowed to drive to work and school. My school was 30 minutes away. And so I was driving a 30-minute commute to school as a 14-year-old and then going to a job after school like an adult.
So that was that your coming of age? I mean, what to you was the process or lack thereof, maybe, of realizing like I'm an adult, I'm a man?
Gosh, that's a great question. Probably the last couple of years of high school, I wasn't home very much. I really did live with a friend, and everything that I did in my life, I paid for and took care of, and so I was kind of felt on my own already. Then when I went away to college, I actually went to Colorado first and played soccer in college. I was on a scholarship for 2 years. I had 2 ACL surgeries, and that's when I ended up going to Kansas University. And I would do a lot of.
What did you major in?
This is funny. I thought when I went to when I went to school my freshman year, I was on the soccer team, and they had us all meet with an advisor, and they said, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? We were super poor growing up, and so all I knew was I just don't want to be poor. And
Is that a major? Not poor? Can I major in
Yeah,
not
can I
poor?
just major in not poor? I'll take that. And so I remember I had never thought about it. She goes, well, what do you want to be? What's your career path? And I went, doctor. And so I was a pre-med major.
Wow.
Well, by my junior year, I was skipping so much class, and classes were starting to get really difficult that I was like, I hate chemistry. I hate organic chemistry. I'm flunking organic chemistry too. Like, I'm not going to get into med school at this rate anyways. So I went to a guidance counselor and was like, what degree can I get with all these pre-med classes? And there happened to be an environmental science degree that was like a lot of biology. And she's like, if you take these 2 rock classes, you can finish with that degree next semester. And I went,
Just need a little geology.
done.
Wow.
So environmental science and biology.
And now you pastor a church called Red Rocks. So, I feel like that's got to come in handy, all your knowledge of like
No, all of those rock classes have helped.
sedentary, igneous, what are the other kind of rocks?
Cretaceous?
Cretaceous?
Cretaceous? Is that a word?
Isn't that a period where dinosaurs lived?
Oh, that's what that is.
There's
Yeah,
another kind
you're
of
right.
rock that has a sea. There's like volcanic, right? Isn't that one?
Bro,
It's not coming back. Red Rocks
I don't
Church.
know.
You need to do a rock
remember.
series, like a whole series, like
Yeah.
where you talk about different kind of rocks and things we can learn from.
Your creativity is so amazing. If you were here, you would have already done 10 of those.
What about the Rocks Will Cry Out series? Like the series on how the different rocks will sing different worship songs.
Huh? We have done one. Well, we weren't the headlining band, but our worship team has played once at Red Rocks. And so one time I've gotten to post Red Rocks at Red Rocks, and that was really cool.
It's poetic. It's poetry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What is the story on that? Because my first concert I ever saw in my life was at Red Rocks. It was
Amazing.
DC Talk,
Come
1992. I was 10
We
years
grew up
old.
differently, Levi.
I got to see Toby Mac and Michael Tate and Kevin Max. Is that what Kevin Max? The 3 guys, the original DC Talk guys. It was new thing. It was fabulous. It was the Lord is doing a new thing.
They were before my saved days.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, we're getting ahead. Let's scratch the Rocks service. No one's going to come to the
No, but I like
Rocks
the
teaching.
DC Talk story.
DC Talk Good, we could find a way to work your geology knowledge into the messaging at some point.
There's a way.
Okay, so then you're in college. Now, how do you meet Jesus then?
So I'm in LA. I'd been there for a few years. I don't know, sometimes I'll say like, oh, I was a drug addict. I don't know if I was. If I was very high functioning. I would do a lot of cocaine every day, but I wasn't like lose your job, sleep on a park bench. I went to work every day. In fact, I think doing coke, I was an amazing worker. I was fast and efficient. So,
Tweaking,
but I did,
yes.
yeah. So, I broke up with a girl, and it was really weird. Started having some, emotions and it was kind of weird. I don't know if it's a good thing. I don't know if it's a bad thing. And then a friend of mine actually attempted suicide. And so I'm now living with the three guys, and my roommate Will comes running into my room, and he's like, Shawn, Shawn, Shawn. And we run out, and there's a stack of notes on the kitchen table. And the top one says, to Shawn and Will, do not blame yourself.
Oh.
It's not your fault. You couldn't have known. And our friend had taken pills to kill himself, and he was on the bathroom floor, and it's just a mess. And so we call 911. And as they're taking him out on a stretcher, the paramedic says to us, they're like, he's not going to make it. I'm sorry, guys. So we go to the hospital, and he's in a coma. And this is crazy. I hadn't thought about this in years. We're all in the room, and we don't know what to do or what to say. And then we all go outside, and we're like smoking cigarettes. And I went, hey, guys, I think I forgot my keys in the room. Bro, because my mom had taken me to a few church services when I was growing up, before I kind of left home, I had heard about heaven and hell. And all of a sudden, I'm standing out there smoking a cigarette, probably had done coke already that day, and was like, I should go whisper in his ear about Jesus real quick. I'm not even kidding. I totally have. So I go into the hospital, and I whisper about Jesus. And I don't even know what I said. Probably like, bro, I don't know any of this.
But I've heard hear me.
If you can hear me. And I leave. And the doctor's like, you guys, you need to leave. He's not going to wake up. La. We all go out and party that night, just like we always do. I wake up the next morning, and my morning ritual was I'd walk out on my balcony in my little apartment in Hollywood, and I'd just sit out there with some coffee and smoke cigarettes. And I think it was my friend's suicide attempt, but all of a sudden I started thinking, I was like, wait a minute. He's in a coma and going to die, and we just went out and partied like we do every single night. If I was in a coma, they would be doing the same thing. And I started having these thoughts that I've never had in my life, like, what does my life matter? Does anyone care that I'm alive? Am I doing anything that matters? Everything I do is selfish and for me. No one would care if I died tomorrow, I think, except for my mom. And she was kind of the only person in my life who'd ever told me about Jesus, other than one friend of mine from college who got saved during college. I called her crying, and I'm like, I just remember going, Mom, my life is meaningless. Mom, my life is meaningless. And it was the first time in my life I ever had a panic attack. And so it was processing my friend's suicide attempt, which he ended up coming out of the coma and was not brain dead like they said he would be, and it's crazy.
Does he remember you whispering in his ear?
No, well, I have no idea. I never asked him.
Okay.
I was so embarrassed that I did it.
Yeah.
That I was like, so I never asked him.
Oh my gosh. I love that your evangelistic gift was even coming out there, even before Christ.
Yeah. So I start having panic attacks, and I'd never had them before. And it was like a real claustrophobic feeling. My skin would start crawling. My heartbeat would be crazy. My chest would tighten. I would feel trapped wherever I'm at, and I would just pace back and forth in my apartment, and I'd start crying. And then I was like, I got to get outside. And I remember I was driving somewhere later that day, and I started having another one in my car, and I was like, I got to get out of my car. So I had panic attacks for about 3 weeks, and was just still trying to do drugs, but not eating. I probably lost like 15 pounds in 3 weeks. I was skin and bones, and I called my mom, and I said, can I come home? I don't know what else to do. And she picks me up at the airport, and I think she started crying when she saw me because I had lost so much weight. And I was at her house for a few days, and I couldn't get this hopeless feeling to go away. I remember we went on a walk one night, and I just said, Mom, I don't even have the ability to picture my life being better. I can't even see it. I can't even fathom it. You know, all she knew to kept doing was tell me about Jesus, and it made no sense to me. So I sat down at this table in her kitchen. I was home alone, and I had all the same pills my friend used. I knew exactly what to do. And I scattered them across this table, and I went and got like a big glass of water like this. And I remember I was shaking and crying, and I just started taking them and drinking the water, and then all of a sudden, it was so crazy, dude. I had this thought, wait a minute, that Sunday school teacher told me about heaven and hell, and what if she's right? And Levi was like, man, if she's right, I'm going to be in one of them in about 30 minutes. Jeez. And I don't know what the rules are. Like, I don't know where I'm going. And I had one friend from college who had gotten saved while we were in college and actually left. And so I called him out of the blue and was like, bro, I think I'm going to take my own life today. And I know that you got church stuff in your life. Can you tell me about heaven and hell? And he just talked to me, calmed me down, actually bought me a plane ticket, flew me to Illinois, and took me to a church service. And it was a Pentecostal church. They did come down to the altar, get on your knees down front, altar calls. And bro, I felt the presence of God for the first time in my life. And when he said, do any of you need Jesus? I looked so like LA, pretentious, leather jacket, chain wallet, cocaine in my pocket, smelled like smoke. And I went down to the altar just bawling. And I was like, God, if you're real, I need you.
Jeez.
And
so you flew with cocaine in your pocket? Because didn't you fly there? Or did you buy some in Illinois?
No, I probably put it in my bag or something. No clue. I had very little concern for like what the rules of life were.
Yeah, wow. So that is a radical story. I've heard versions of it, but never like listed out like that.
Yeah. And so I remember walking out of that church service. I was 24. I had zero direction in life. And I remember having this thought, I'm going to spend the rest of my life telling people about what I just experienced. Now, never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I'd be a pastor or work at a church. I just thought I would tell people about what I had experienced somehow. And then as I started getting involved with church a little bit, I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll be like a Christian movie maker, or because I really loved creativity and video. And then I was a youth pastor, and I ended up being a youth pastor and a young adult at this church I got saved at years later. Went to an internship, then was on staff as a young adults and youth pastor. And then me and Jill were like, man, we're hitting that 30 mark. I think I was 31 maybe, and we felt like God was calling us to start a church. And of course, what business do we have doing that? We have zero experience. I'm still learning the stories in the Bible. Yeah. Like, I didn't grow up knowing this stuff. I've never led anything. I've never even kept a real job. And we got together with some friends and moved to Denver and said, let's go for it.
How'd you pick Denver?
So for me, I had heard someone say, if you're going to, talk to somebody about Jesus, it's easier when you have things in common with them. They said it way more articulately, but it was the general message. And I remember looking back going, okay, my life really fell apart right after college. And it was because now I think I'm all smart. I got a degree. No one in my family's ever had a degree. Look at me. I got life whipped. I got life figured out. Nobody could talk to me about God. Like, it's different, right? Like, when we do outreaches downtown, if you need food, you'll listen to me. And if I give you food, you'll let me talk to you about God.
Right.
But if I think I don't need anything, you have no leverage. There's nothing you can offer me, and I'm not going to listen. So for some reason, I just had this kind of like, I want to find a place where there's a bunch of people like me right after college who think they got life whipped and think they don't need God. I want to find a bunch of people like that. Well, at the time, so I started studying demographics. At the time, Denver had the most bachelor's degrees per capita of any city in the country. It had a very young median age and very few churches. Very small percentage of the people went to church, and I went,
That's
the city for me.
Wow. People who think they're already in heaven, basically.
People who think I don't need Jesus, I got everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was.
That's how we ended up. We actually picked 4 cities. We picked Denver, Austin, Seattle, and Portland. And of the 4, I only had one friend in one of them, so I came to Denver first, and we fell in love.
Yeah, wow.
So, with the city. I didn't fall in love with him.
And 17 years later, you and your wife Jill have built an amazing church. I mean, I've been out there a number of times. I mean, it's just outrageous. Of course, it's being spoken of around the world, and the music and the songs and Red Rock worship, as well as your teaching, has just gone out far and wide, and it's incredible.
Well, I promise you, it's an army of people behind the scenes doing this thing. And I have said from the jump, if this ever works, it will be in spite of us, not because of us. I feel like we're one of those situations where God gets more credit. He goes, if I can use people that jacked up, trust me.
He's golfing with a handicap. Yeah, I think we all feel that way at times.
Yeah.
But that's what God loves, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, talk about your wife Jill. She's amazing. Jenny and I love you and your wife like crazy. We have so much fun together and are collecting stories and eager for more. But yeah, when did you meet Jill along that way?
So I ended up moving to Illinois to be a part of that church.
That's when you got involved in youth ministry.
Where I got saved at.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And the first night I went to a small group, she had just moved to the city. She had just graduated from college and had just been hired to be a 6th grade teacher at the Christian school attached to the church. And so I met her in a small group. And in fact, she came with a boyfriend. And I'm telling you, I had one of those like, I think she's the one. But
just got to deal with the boyfriend, and we're gonna be.
I was definitely like, she could do better than that.
Got to get rid of him, and we'll be in business. We'll shake and bake.
Yeah. So I met her at church. Met her in a small group. And her testimony is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
She grew up going to church, has been saved most of her life. In fact, one time when I was dating, I was like, man, it's hard for me to date you because you seem so perfect. Like, you haven't done any of these bad things that I I did on a professional level. I'm like, have you ever even cussed? No kidding. She said this to me. She goes, I did once in the mirror just to see what it would sound like.
Stop it.
I'm like, oh my
gosh. From the sound of music.
How are you going to tolerate me for the rest of your life?
God has a sense of humor. Opposites.
Yeah, right?
Opposites. And all. She's a big part of your journey too. I mean, just her encouragement in your life and.
Bro, if it wasn't for her, I don't know that I would be here today. I mean that. I know God can do the impossible. But I'm just telling you, He used her in an amazing way. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into that. And of course, you guys have 3 boys. Just a beautiful family. Yep. A lot of coming and going. A lot of fun. What's your favorite thing about being a father?
You know, one of the only things I dreamt of all growing up. Well, I had 2 main goals. I was going to be a professional athlete, obviously. I couldn't decide between baseball and basketball, but I was obviously going to be a professional athlete.
And yet you played college soccer.
I know, it's crazy. It's the only thing I was actually very good at that someone would pay me for. So, pay school for. I knew I wanted to be a dad. Like all growing up, I couldn't wait to be a dad. And I think it was that void that I had in my own heart, not having a father. And so, and then not having a close relationship with my stepfather. And so, I couldn't wait to be a dad, man. And so when you say, what was the question? What's your favorite thing?
Yeah, that's a good answer. You're just saying you wanted to be one. That is. What was your template in your head when you thought of a father? Was it God? Was there another human example? Because you're an incredible dad.
No.
I've watched you serve your kids and love them, and you're fun. You have a friendship with them, but you're a very good father. So, where did you get your map from?
Man, I have never had a map. I remember telling God when we found out she was pregnant with Ethan that I remember being real scared. And I was like, I've never actually seen this play out. I don't know how to do this. And, but I remember telling God, I'll always be there and I'll try real hard. And that's been the game plan. I'm just always there as much as I can be, and I try real hard. And obviously, I think that process of God changing your life over time, you start to become things you never knew you could become. I mean, man, I was a selfish, lying, stealing, drug abusing. Like, I was not a good kid and a good person. And
But being fair to yourself as a kid,
Jesus, I
what
never
options
wanted.
did you have? I mean, you weren't given tools, you weren't given, you know what I mean? I'm not saying you were without
Yeah,
sin in any of those things, but
yeah,
I mean, I'm just looking at 12-year-old Shawn, who's 2 years away from driving 30 minutes to school, I mean,
yeah,
just being compassionate on yourself and what you faced.
yeah. So before Jesus, I knew I wanted to be a father, but knew not yet,
Sure.
because I knew I wasn't the man that I would need to be a good father. But I always wanted to be a dad. Man, I love those boys so much. Levi,
Yeah, you have
just
great kids. Your oldest Ethan is in Bible college or
yep,
college down study Bible schools down in
yep,
Florida,
yep.
and then of course you have Austin, he's playing, who's just crushing sports. Although didn't he just have an injury?
He broke his back.
That's
So
a
he's like
real
wearing this
serious
huge
injury,
back brace, and he's got to wear it, I think, for like 8 weeks. And they think he's going to be okay, but
and he's a
it was a
football player,
football
right?
injury.
Yeah, football
Yeah,
injury.
he loves football.
How
Yeah.
did he break his back playing football? I haven't heard that
He
story yet.
recovered and he dove on the ground to recover an onside kick. And some kid came in like this, helmet first, and just speared him in the back when he was laying on the
Oh
ground.
my
And it
gosh!
fractured
And
fractured
did you know
something.
right
Yeah.
away something was very bad?
Oh yeah, he didn't get up.
Oh,
Yeah, he was just laying there, and I was like, oh. So,
and then you have Ashton, who's your youngest boy.
yep, firecracker.
Yep, he keeps you guys in line. You guys are very competitive. One of my favorite memories from our summer adventure, which we should talk about that at some point, was the smash ball. Just the intense,
Bro.
competitive. We had brought this smash ball, which is, if you haven't seen it, it's just two paddles and a little rubber ball that's the size of like a golf ball, but it's rubber, and you just trying to keep it aloft. And we, in our family, we do these competitions where it's how many contacts can you make without it hitting the ground. Doesn't matter how far, how close you are. And I just remember the utter drive for you guys to beat that record, which I don't think you ever did. I don't think you beat the Lusko
Well,
high
we'll talk
score.
about that later. I feel like there was a trophy awarded at some point, but
It might have
no,
been
you know what?
best,
I have always
most
been that way.
improved player. But I mean, I saw a different side of you.
Oh, I was bleeding when we were done. I had like cuts and scrapes, and we were diving.
That was we were down by the cows and the rattlesnakes at that point, right?
Remember, that's where that guy shot that
Well, he was
rattlesnake.
going to.
Oh, that's right. The guy stopped him.
River or
Oh, there was trauma.
Grift. What was his name? Was very unhappy about the Brent. Brent was very unhappy.
That's right.
What
And
was
I
the?
don't know the rules out there. And I was like, well, I'm in favor of shooting it. I'm just saying, because we're sleeping here tonight.
Okay, so context on that. Yeah, so we went on this adventurous families where I took you. You had never tent camped in your life. You had never been in a tent or done any kind of camping. So I thought it would be a good idea to take you on a canoe camping trip where we would canoe by day, set up camp in wilderness area. There's no cell service. There's nothing made by man's hand. Retracing some of the Lewis and Clark journeys, which has been a long fascination for me. And we camped at 3 of the Lewis and Clark sites. And then at one of them, a rattlesnake, at everywhere we stayed, there was like rattlesnakes like crazy, because
there
it's
were.
down in the
There
lower
were.
part of Montana where there's more rattlesnakes. And then these guys were camping, like, was it a bunch of boys and these older guys?
Yeah, I think it seemed, I don't know if it was like father son kind of deal.
That's
It's
what it
kind of,
was. They were going to share
yeah.
the campsite with us one night and stay there also. And that big snake rolled into camp, and the guy came over to me and you and was like, "I'm going to shoot this rattlesnake. I brought a gun." And I think you were like, "That's a great idea, sir. You should totally do that."
I was, I didn't know like that was a bad thing. I thought I'm from Kansas.
Yeah.
Like I saw my stepdad kill a rattlesnake on our porch. And I'm like, that's what you
Well, and
do
my
because
thinking
otherwise you're
is
in
a good
trouble.
snake is a dead snake. So yes, please. And I'm sleeping here,
Right.
so let's get rid of this snake. And so, but then when we had told that guy that, one of our outfitters came over and was like, "You he can't shoot. Like, this is a national park. Like, you can't do
Right.
that. You'll go to prison. We'll all get in trouble. They'll come shut this all down if they." But I don't know how anybody would have heard the gunshot. By the way, there was nobody
Oh,
for hundreds of miles.
no.
Uh,
No,
Maybe Ranger Joe would have come out of a canoe from nowhere, but.
yeah, all of you watching should know that Levi did terrible things to to me through this trip. I'm just kidding. You know what? We actually had a blast, but we did go from 0 to
It
100.
was hilarious because you know your speed is room service in the plaza in New York City. Like, let's just go be bougie, and I'm like, dude, let's not bathe for 5 days and forage for berries in like Sacagawea in the
Oh
wilderness.
yeah. Do you remember? So I have, we have these huge wet bags that we have all our supplies in, and I have, I'm thinking like outfit for day type life, and I wore the same pair of swimming trunks the whole week.
Yeah.
Slept in them, canoed in them, camped in them, and they had a huge spot on the back because remember I sat on a rat
Yes.
in the canoe and killed it and didn't know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I do remember that because the mice and the rats when they take shelter in the canoe.
Yeah.
It was memorable, and you were a good sport when I first pitched it to you. You were like, "Yeah, let's do it." And then I remember like your family's faces, all of them, like when we FaceTime to talk to them about it, and like you remember you just having to go to REI and Patagonia. You're like, "What exactly do I need?"
I would text you like once a day, like, I'm sorry, I need a what?
Yes. What is this?
Yeah.
Paddling gloves. You get
It was
blisters on your
funny.
hands.
I told Ethan that when we were talking recently that we were talking about doing a family vacation with you guys this summer. First thing he said, he goes, Dad, can they do a vacation like we like to vacation?
That is so funny.
I'm like, what do you mean, son? He goes, like a hotel.
Yeah. Could we not go into the wild? All right,
Yeah.
Shawn, that was fun, and I look forward to our next adventure. Hearing your story like that, I know it was powerful for a lot of people, and just giving hope. I think of the mom or the dad who's listening, who's got a prodigal son or daughter,
Mm.
who's out, and you know, I think it just gives such hope to hear that you were at such a low spot in your life and had gone through so much, faced so much, but that Jesus, sought you down and chased you. And, not only did you get radically free of the drugs, which I wonder, was there a process to that? Did it take rehab? Was there still, of course, you give your life to Jesus, some of that addiction still remains, right?
It was crazy. I got saved. I went back to LA. I lived I was with my roommate back in LA, and I didn't go out for 3 weeks. And he would go out every night. I would stay home every night. And to me, being a Christian meant I get to go to heaven, but here's what it means for life. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't chew, don't date girls who do.
Yeah.
That's how they like. I just knew
Yeah,
I
you
couldn't.
don't want to date a girl with chewing tobacco in her mouth. I mean, it doesn't sound like a good
Kansas
time.
has different rules, but for me, it meant stop living the way I'm living. Don't do
Sure.
drugs. Don't have sex.
Externals.
Yep. And so for 3 weeks, man, I was just like, I'd go sit at like a coffee shop on like Melrose Avenue, and it was so funny because the only thing I kept doing was smoking. So I'd like open up my Bible and be smoking cigarettes, and I'd trying to figure out how to read it, and had no clue what was going on. And 3 weeks later, one of my good friends there was like, "Come on, bro, just go out with us once. You don't have to do anything. I know you're making these changes." I couldn't really explain to him that I had this experience with Jesus. I didn't know what to say, and I went out that night, and that turned into man, just have one. Just have one. One can't hurt. And that night, I think I did more drugs in one night than I'd ever done. Went home with a girl, like everything I said I would never do again. And I woke up the next day feeling like such a failure. I made all these promises to myself and all these promises to God, and someone called me from that church in Illinois, it was actually the pastor's wife. She was like, "Oh, I'm just calling to check on you." And it happened to be the next morning after that. And I was just like, bad time to call. And she's like, you need to flee evil. You need to start doing life with some people who are going in the same direction with you. You can't hope you go this way, but get in a car with people going that way and think you're going to miraculously get where you want to go. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, my life is here in LA. And she's like, go live with your mom. Move here and live with, we'll get you a roommate here, get you a home opener here, and you can come be a part of the church. And I was like, okay. Like, I just felt it. I was like, if I'm going to pursue Jesus, I can't stay right here and do life with all my friends because I just know me well enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm going to dive back into everything I don't want to do. So I moved to LA, lived with a home opener, and eventually became an intern at the church.
Wow. Beautiful. Okay.
But so I only did drugs once after I got saved.
And there was a change of environment that led to the ability to change. It helped a lot.
There were many nights when I thought about, like, I'm going to go downtown and try to find something and but I just didn't. And it's just the grace of God.
Yeah. Powerful, bro. And the church you guys have built has maintained that edge of we want to reach people who don't know Jesus. You guys never shifted over the years into a kind of community of the initiated. That's where I first came on to you came onto my radar, hearing about what God was doing at Red Rocks Church, being aware of this great church in Colorado, which I always had a keen interest in because I was born in Colorado, have a soft spot for Colorado. And when the invitation eventually came for me to come and preach, I was like, yeah, of course. Like, I've got just a soft spot, like coming into my birth state and being a part of this great church. And then, you and I, that night, what was that, 6 years ago? How long has it been? It's been a minute.
Oh, I don't know. It's been a while.
Maybe 2016, I feel like.
I'm so bad with dates. I feel like I tell a story and I go, that happened a few weeks ago or like 4 years ago.
Well, all that to say, I met you that night. Of course, your church was fabulous and warm. And I think you guys had brought me in to preach on my book, Swipe Right, the sex message to your young adults. But then, you and I sat next to each other at dinner at that Italian restaurant in Cherry Creek. And I just remember really God saying, we're supposed to be friends. Like, you meet a lot of people. You can't invest in everyone equally. Jesus didn't. Peter, James, and John had a different relationship than the other disciples and then the other 500. And I remember just God saying to me, this is someone who you're supposed to invest in this relationship. And I told you that later on, and we just have continued to chip away at it. And it's been just for me. I can't speak for you, but I can say for me, it's been a very rewarding friendship in that God's just given me a real love for you. God gave David and Jonathan a unique bond. I feel like we have a unique bond, and so I just am really grateful for you, for your friendship. Your marriage with Jill has blessed Jenny and I. We both have a very, in low moments, I've been encouraged by you and been able to walk with you through some challenging times as well.
Yep. Man, we love you so much. Me and Jill, it will often come up about how much we love you guys, how highly we think of you, how we can't wait to hang out again. So my wife is already praying that my boys will marry a girl like your daughter. Like, we just love your whole family.
Oh, man. Well, it's reciprocated. All right. So you have a book 5 days from today that is coming out. I'm holding an advanced reader's copy, which will not be the copy I underline. And I mean, of course, I've been able to read this as I got to endorse it, which thanks for that opportunity. The digital version I have, this came as an ARC, which is an advanced reader's copy, bootleg, in other words. I think I was the first to purchase it on Amazon. I can't prove it.
I think you were.
But I found the listing, I think the day it went up on Amazon. I bought it. It should be showing up at my house any day now, which I'm so excited about. That copy that I'll be able to underline and all the rest. But tell us a little bit about this. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So those who are listening or watching will be able to get Attacking Anxiety from Panic and Depressed to Alive and Free, the newest book by Shawn Johnson. This, in 5 days, is out, people, but you can get your copy ordered. Shawn, tell us a little bit about this book, what it means to you, what the journey was like.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you so much. And many people don't know this, but you actually helped me come up with the subtitle one night while you were driving in the car. And I was like, man, I need a subtitle. And you were like, how about? And I was like, brilliant.
Hey, Words with Friends is that I'm all about that. Not the
Yeah,
game, the actual words with people that I care about.
that's right. So after getting saved, I didn't have panic attacks. I actually kind of felt like I dealt with a little depression for a while. I think it was trying to figure out how to do life without illegal substances in my body all the time.
Sure. And you had that one
Um,
the day of your friend's attempted on suicide. That
mhm.
was your first panic attack you had that you can recall.
That's the first one I can ever remember having.
Okay.
And so come out to Denver, started church. 4 years in, the church was about maybe 1,200-ish people coming to the church. And one of my best buddies who started the church with me decided that he wanted to go and try to start another church and was going to leave. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this without him. And I started, oftentimes I'd be walking around my office and find myself going over to a window, kind of going like, whew, like I just having trouble getting deep breaths. And it started getting more intense and more intense. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And one day I have a total panic attack, freak out, don't know what's going on, drive to my doctor's office. I go in there. I don't even think I had an appointment. I'm almost positive. I think I called on the way there going, I'm coming. I have to see him no matter what. Crying, shaking. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. He's like, you're okay. You're just having a panic attack. And he actually put me on some medicine. And so for 10 years, I took anti-anxiety medication, but didn't tell anybody. I didn't want anybody to know.
Other than Jill.
Yeah, Jill knew, obviously. But she never knew how bad the panic attacks would get. Unless I was having one in front of her, I never would tell. I was just so embarrassed because I had this thing in my mind that was like, well, I tell people about the peace and the joy and the freedom of Christ. I can't have this. I can't have anxiety and depression and tell people you can have peace and joy through Jesus. I must be a hypocrite, something super broken. Maybe I shouldn't be a pastor.
Which
And I
then
was just,
you're covering shame on shame
well,
on all
that's
the
just
rest. Yeah.
so ashamed of what was going on in my head and in my soul. And so I just didn't want anybody to know. And in 2019, and I had gotten to a place with the church where I would tell them a little anxiety. I'd make a funny story, like a true story, but like I got kicked off of an airplane because I had a little bit of a panic attack on the runway because I was feeling claustrophobic.
Because
Isn't that crazy?
that was a big trigger for you, right?
Yeah, but anytime I would feel claustrophobia or stuck in any environment, I would start to feel if it wouldn't even have to be a tight space. I didn't want to go out on a boat on the ocean because I'm stuck on the boat and can't escape. But so I started having a lot of panic attacks, didn't want to tell anybody. In 2019, I was driving home from the dentist, oddly enough, and I had such a bad panic attack, and I'd been having them for years. So it was crazy to me how much more.
Which, by the way, the reason Jenny's not with me today, just so everyone knows, she was at the dentist today, and the dentist accidentally cut her lip, or the dental hygienist. And
Oh my
so
God.
she was supposed to come in for this podcast, and she sends her apologies. But she's like, calls me. She's like, "Hey, they accidentally cut my lip. I'm a numb, and I can't, So that's why she's
Oh
not
my
here. So
gosh.
it made me realize that when you said dentist. So
Dentists are scary, let's be honest.
what's the moral of the story? Don't trust a dentist.
Don't trust a dentist. It's really the moral of the story.
They're trying to
It's really
keep
a
us
theme
apart,
throughout the
Shawn.
book.
They're trying to keep us apart. We can't let them win.
So I'm driving home. I start having a panic attack. It's so bad. and if anyone watching or listening, if you've had panic attacks, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you'll almost go like, what? It sounds crazy. You almost feel like I'm for sure going to die, or this is never going to end, which might be worse.
Yeah.
And I was driving home in my truck, and I start shaking and crying, and my whole body's tingling, and I have this claustrophobic, oh my gosh, I got to get out of my truck, I'm gonna die kind of feeling, but I didn't know where to go. I was driving near one of my son's schools. I'm like, I can't go there. The kids will be outside, and I can't go to my office because I can't let anybody see me, and I don't want to go to my house because all the houses around our house, most of them have Red Rocks Church car stickers, and I'm like, they can't hear me out in the yard crying right now. And then I called Jill and I said, babe, pray for me. I don't think I can make it home. And she knew exactly what was going on. And I should have probably given her more information than that in hindsight. Pull my car over to the side of the road.
Because you hung up at that point, right?
Yeah, right. Hung up. And poor Jill, she knew where I was coming from. So she got a couple of my friends from work, and they weren't driving looking for me. They found me on the highway. I was sitting on the side of the highway on the little foothills, just shaking, crying, screaming at God. I'm screaming for help. They start walking up to me, and the first thing I remember saying was, I quit. I can't do this anymore. I quit. I can't be a pastor. I can't do this. And then I just kept saying, I'm sorry. Because, you're so, when you're having a panic
ashamed,
attack, you're so humiliated, but you can't stop it.
Yeah.
And I just remember saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And they got me home. We were sitting at my kitchen table. And by this point, my body is exhausted. I've probably been crying and shaking and freaking out for like a good hour. I'm exhausted. One of my friends says, hey, you're not going to do anything stupid, are you? And I was like, no, I'm good. And then I went, you better take my guns. Because I just had this feeling like I don't know if I can trust myself tonight. And this whole experience obviously scared Jill. She calls one of my pastors. I go see him, and in this one conversation is really where the whole concept of this book comes from. Because after this meeting, I would go to a 7-week inpatient anti-anxiety treatment facility, and then have been in counseling and therapy.
Yeah, which was pretty intense. Involved like exposure therapy with airplanes. I mean, you told me some of the things.
They locked me in an elevator one day trying to help me with claustrophobia. It was crazy. Side story. It was amazing, though. It was amazing. What was I saying?
The statement that Pastor Chris.
Oh, that's right. So I'm sitting at this table with Pastor Chris.
That's Chris Hodges, Church of the Highlands. Yeah.
That's right. Amazing man. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I'm falling apart, having panic attacks multiple times throughout the day, can't function. And I kind of expected him, Levi, to like get out of his seat and come around the table and give me like a good old boy hug, like it's going to be okay, buddy. And he didn't. And he actually did the opposite. He stared right at me, and he goes, it's time you stop being mad at yourself. It's time you stop blaming yourself for this and started fighting the enemy. It's time to fight back. And I just lose it. I start weeping. And I'm like, I'm embarrassed to say this because I'm a pastor, and I guess I should know these things. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
And he said, here's where we're going to start. There's a little room over here on the other side of my office. Here's a little Bluetooth speaker. I want you and Jill to go in this room for 30 minutes a day. I stayed in Alabama for 2 weeks. I want you to go in this room for 30 minutes a day, turn up worship music, and at the level of the worship music, I want you guys to pray together out loud and worship together for 30 minutes every day. That's how you're going to start battling. And I'll be honest, I was kind of like, that's it? That's all you got for me? Man, it was tough. Some days I couldn't even say a prayer. Some days all I could say was help. Some days I would just listen to the words of the songs. Some days I could sing a little bit. After about 2 weeks, I could pray out loud with my wife. I could put my hands in the air in faith and say, I'm hurting right now, but I know you got a plan. And it was the beginning of me going, I have to do something. the lie I had believed for all those years was I can't do anything about it. I'm just stuck. I'm just always going to deal with depression a little bit, and I'm always going to have anxiety attacks. And Pastor Chris telling me that you could actually do something about it. It was the first time in my heart I went, no, I don't have to settle for this. I can fight back. And so really, this book is the ways in which I've learned to do that over the past few years. A lot of it was through counseling and therapy and just time in the Word and time with pastors. And so really, it's like my attack plan. And I'm not perfect. I still have some anxiety sometimes. I still feel depressed some days. But I'm better and I'm healthier and I'm stronger than I ever thought I would be. Like I had given up. I got real suicidal while I was at that counseling place. Had some real tough nights. And to be even just this far on the other side of it, I can't tell you how crazy it feels because I never thought it would end. I never thought it would get better. And so, in fact, and I was actually talking with Pastor Craig, and I was like, when I was thinking about writing this book, and I was like, man, it might be too soon. You know, like, I'm still really broken. I'm still not perfect. I still don't have it all. And he's like, that makes you the perfect person then.
Yeah.
Because you'll be real, and you'll be raw, and you'll be honest. And
quite frankly, you know, your notes from the ground zero, what got you through those initial moments, those are precious. You know, those are hard yards, you know, and for you, because I've watched you walk through this. I remember the day, you know, that you had to tell your church you're going on sabbatical for a while to get this healing, get this help, step away for a while. Watching you go through all of this, you know, it could have easily gone a different direction, you know, and yet here you are now. You're the light of Christ shining in your eye. You're leading. You're honestly, I mean, I remember it was a big deal for you to go on that canoe trip because being in the middle of nowhere, without cell service, without, you know, inaccessible by vehicle, no one, you're like that could have easily triggered that. But to watch you, like, you're getting in little planes. Even to come to us, you had to get in little planes, you know. And it's like you've run toward the roar. You've overcome things that you thought would hold you back forever, you know. And to see such health, such growth, to me, to the person who's listening, who is facing these sorts of things or knows someone who is, they don't need theories and ideas from someone who has no idea what it's like to be on the side of the highway crying in your truck, you know, and to think that you're like, no, this is literally, because I mean, as you go through the book, it's broken up into sections: the know section, the start section, the stop section, the remember section. You know, to me, it's like you're saying, hey, this like almost like a footpath through a minefield. You're like, this is where I put my foot. Then I stepped on this. Then I stepped on this. So that person can say, like, you're saying, like, you can follow me. Like, this is how I got through. And I think that's very brave and very generous of you.
Thank you. I'm really, I was really nervous to take this project on. And as you know, it's a journey to do one of these things. And so for me now, it's about to be released here in just a few days. It kind of doesn't even feel real, but I'm really excited. I'm I really believe it's going to be able to help people.
No, I can
and
sure of that.
Help people battle something that has taken so many days away from me, you know, and enjoy. And so I'm excited.
Now let me ask you this. You know, I see the conversation around anxiety, and I see a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives. And of course, there's no one reason why people deal with this. You know, there's of course some people have a predisposition to chemical imbalance. There's some people who, because of hard circumstances, of course, you talk about that. You know, some of the pain, the trauma you face as a child, some of that stuff still bubbles up, right? But there is also undoubtedly some of it that is the result of decisions that our culture and we are making. Like what part of it do you think, you know, is made worse or brought on? Some people listening, like, what part do you think sociology and choices has to play in, or even put it another way, like someone who could make it a lot better for themselves by, making some different choices?
Yeah. After these hundreds and hundreds of hours of counseling, I really realized for me there were kind of four things that were putting fuel on the fire for my anxiety. One was past trauma, and it's kind of what I talked about at that talk that I did at your church. I hadn't dealt with it. I didn't want to deal with it. I pretended it had not had an effect on me. I pretended I was over it. So I needed to go do some real work. I did a lot of childhood trauma therapy, and so that was one thing. A second thing was, I would say, just an actual life full of pressures, right? I mean, everybody listening or watching right now has that, and this pandemic that we're all living through is put exclamation points behind most of those,
Sure.
right? And so just pressures. One was, though, self-induced pressure. It was the way in which I was seeing my job. It was how I was approaching my job. I would have such bad performance anxiety before the whole week getting ready to preach that I would always hope someone else could come preach, because I would have so much anxiety and I wouldn't sleep, and I'd be miserable all week, and I would have multiple panic attacks sometimes. And it was because I was like trying so hard to perform. I wanted to perform for people, to perform for God. I know that in this day of social media, somebody's going to watch my 60-second clip of preaching next to Levi Lusko's 60-second clip of preaching, and I'm not one millionth as articulate as he is, and I got to do better, and I got to do more, and I got to get more creative. And it's not enough that I'm talking about an invisible God and talking to you about the most important areas of your life, but now I got to make it rhyme, and it's got to start with the same letter, and I got to have quotes for Instagram by Sunday afternoon, and I got to be careful what shoes I wear. And like I was performing and comparing.
Yeah.
Like
That's
crazy.
real. That's very relatable
Well,
for all of us. Because I'm over here going, I relate to that exact same, a lot of those same pressures, and I think that's very common.
Can I take a little tangent on this topic real quick with you?
There's no rules.
The coolest thing,
Roads, where we're going, we don't need no roads.
come on, we don't need no roads. I was talking to my counselor one day, and I was telling him all that stuff. I think this will help somebody listening or watching. I was telling him about how I was trying to perform. I was telling him about all this stuff. This couple came up to me one day after church. They were the nicest couple in the world, and he's dealing with really bad cancer. And she came up, and they were crying, and she said, "I just want you to know that your messages are the only things that are keeping us going right now. We're so thankful." And then she kind of jokingly hits me on the shoulder, and she goes, "So no pressure, but it better be good again next week."
Oh, geez.
And what she didn't realize is, like, you just described this semi truck that sits on my chest all week long when I'm about to speak. And so I was telling this counselor this, and he goes, "Have you ever had one of those take your kid to work days?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Tell me about it." And I told him about this whole day. I took Ethan to work, and we prayed, and then I had him sit at my desk, and he didn't know what to do. So I was like, "Hey, there's a girl in the church about your age. Why don't you write her a letter? She has leukemia." And he didn't know what to say. So I was like, "Well, tell her, you're in the same grade. You're going to pray for her. You think she's strong." And then I delivered the letter. So I'll make this quick. So at the end of it, he goes, "Okay, so do you think your son had a whole bunch of anxiety about that day?" And I was like, "No. Sitting at my desk, I take care of the mortgage. I told him what to do. I gave him the words to say. I delivered the letter for him." He goes, "Well, I'm not a pastor, but isn't that kind of what God does for you?" And then he reads me this verse that's like, the one who called you will do it for you. And takes me through Matthew 10, where he's like, if you just spend time with me, then you'll hear from me in private. You go tell him from the rooftops. It won't be you speaking. It'll be the power of the Holy Spirit speaking. He goes, what if you approached all of your sermons as, I'm not going to impress anybody today. I'm just going to work with Dad today.
There you go.
And he does all the heavy lifting. And it was just like game changing for me, starting to see my job differently and some of that stuff. And one of the things that was fire to my depression and anxiety was also some chemical imbalances.
Yeah.
That was real as well.
There was some medical component to it, which is not a lack of faith any more than me wearing contact lenses means, man, I don't really trust God because I had to rely on these lenses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank God that he's given us all the different tools at our disposal. Yeah. Shawn, I'm excited. I'm excited about your story, what God's doing in your life, how it's helping those listening now, those who will read this book. And I imagine, there's a part of it maybe that you probably were like, I don't know if I can include this. I mean, I'm sure there was probably many moments like that as you were writing it. You're like, is this too much? And then I'm sure on the other hand, there's also, so thank you for going there. But on the other hand of it, there's also some parts you're like, I just can't wait for someone who's really dealing with hard stuff to get this part. Is there a particular either chapter or section that you're like, man, the person who buys it is probably worth the price of admission just for this one thought? Or
gosh, there's so much about it that I'm excited about. There's without giving away too much, there's one thing at the beginning that I'm very excited about, and one thing that's actually in the appendix. There's an appendix in there. I don't know if you noticed that in the table of contents, but it's called Panic Attack Survival Guide.
Oh, that's great.
And
it's very
it is
practical.
Oh my gosh. So when I was in that 7 weeks of inpatient counseling, the first 2 hours of every day was how to practically deal with anxiety and depression. And so it's 5 things that I now do. If I feel a panic attack coming on, here's the 5 things that I'll do. And 5 things to do if I'm trying to help a loved one through a panic attack.
Which is really, really helpful.
Stuff, bro. That stuff right there I felt like that right there is sort of like triage. And then the rest of the book is now let's go live life differently.
Yeah, because we don't want to just be managing the acute symptoms all the time, but actually deal with some of the roots and wow. Well, that's
just got to get through the moment, right? You got to get through the moment, and the first section I use this phrase, and it's going to set some people free, and it's, you're not crazy, you're not alone, and this will end.
Yeah.
And it's what I needed to know on that day on the side of the road, because I felt like I was going crazy, and I felt like no one would ever understand what I feel and think and am experiencing. And it's not true. And I thought it would never end. It's not true. And so I'm excited about the beginning. I'm excited about that appendix because I know it'll help a bunch of people. But the life lessons are really in the middle.
Well, I can say personally, not only do I think this is powerful, even just what you said right there. I mean, goodness gracious, whatever the price of this book is, just that Panic Attack Survival Guide, and how smart the helpful guide for the loved one who's walking, which I'm sure Jill informed that a lot, is huge. But I mean,
I learned from her how to write that part of it, right?
Yeah,
because it was her support that got me through it. And so I learned, here's what you need to do for someone who's feeling absolute hopelessness.
Yeah.
And I learned watching her, and it was amazing. Well,
and, from my perspective, having spent hours on the phone with you through my own journey through some of this, and just I remember vivid memory of you praying for me and us talking when I was having, my own touch of that in 2020, and your advice to me. I'm grateful to have had a living version of this book in our friendship. So I can heartily endorse and approve this because I think it's going to be as helpful to others as it has been to me. And so I would say thank you for what is going to be a great resource for forever for us, as we know people are dealing with this, to have this, hey, let's get this into their hands. And So thank you, Shawn. This has been amazing. We'll have to have a part 2 with Jill and Jenny, our better halves.
Way better halves.
But congratulations. Thank you for sharing your story. And where's the best place for people to go for all things Shawn Johnson? Is there a book website?
For this, it's attackinganxietybook.com.
And is there small group stuff on there?
Yeah, so there will be, it's all being thrown, there are all kinds of stuff. There's going to be resources for pastors. There's going to be some of my sermon notes. There's a small group curriculum, discussion questions for every chapter. You can also get a direct link. You can always find it, but it's real simple. They'll send you a link to, I've created an Attacking Anxiety Spotify playlist.
Oh, wow.
And it's a bunch of songs that are my go-to songs when I'm feeling anxiety coming on. And so you can link up with that, and anytime I add a new song on there, you'll be able to listen to that. And that's been a real cool thing to share with people, because so many people are like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, if you do nothing else, start slowing your breathing and put this on.
Slow the breathing, put the music on.
So,
Shawn, does the thought of another cold plunge with me, does that give you happy thoughts or sad thoughts?
Levi, my bones were cold. I told Jill the next day. I'm like, babe, I think my bones are still cold.
That's funny. Is that a medical condition? I feel like I have cold bones.
I have cold bone syndrome.
Yeah.
No, you know what? That day, anyone who knows you knows this about you. You're one of the best salesmen in the world on whatever you're excited about, right? And so you got me so excited. I was actually on my phone on the plane that day going home looking for cold plunges and what kind of saunas are out there in the world. And oh my gosh, but yeah, that cold plunge, I've never done anything like that.
Well,
That was
we'll have
something
to,
else.
We'll have to get back in the cold plunge for round 2. All right, buddy. I love you. Thanks for coming on today.
Love you so much.
Awesome.
Thanks, man. Have a good day.
All
I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye.
Thank you so much for listening. And be sure to swing by LeviLusko.com to see what's going on in our world, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. In the meantime, we would love to connect with you on social media. Jenny and Levi Lusko, out.